Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a great day. I'd like to give you some reasons why you should be playing Oblivion in the current year. Whatever year that happens to be when you're listening to this content will be evergreen. Before I get to that, I'm recording this in April 2022, and Oblivion is actually free to all Prime members. So if you have an Amazon Prime membership, or if you know somebody who does, because it's a copy-paste code, you can get the entire game free forever on Good Old Games, GOG.com. I will provide a link down below to grab that code, and then there will be a link in that page to actually redeem it or copy-paste a code that you got from someone else. So grab it. It's free. There's really no reason not to get it. And if you're listening at some other time, well, Oblivion's usually pretty cheap, and it often goes on sale, so I think it's worth a couple of dollars to play. Let me give you some reasons as to why. Number one, it's fun. It's fun on the micro, macro, and meta levels of the game. It's fun to swing your sword around and kill skeletons or whatever enemies you happen to come across. It's fun to do the quests and explore. And it's also fun to get really deep into the leveling system of Oblivion and all the gear systems, magic systems, all the stuff that's there. It's fun on every level, and I still think it's fun as I'm recording this in 2022. Reason number two, it's the perfect balance between Morrowind and Skyrim. Morrowind is a full-on RPG, Skyrim is kind of RPG light, and Oblivion is a really good split between the two. In Morrowind, you have this thing where you can miss with your weapon, and in some cases you can miss over and over again, and it can be a little bit frustrating, a little bit annoying. Whereas in Oblivion, if you manage in the action RPG system to hit something with your sword, you do indeed hit it. And the system's more managed, how much damage you do and whether you knock the opponent down or if you can do a special move and that sort of stuff. In Oblivion, though, you still have all of the deep systems that go along with leveling up your skills and improving your attributes. Unlike Skyrim, which is fairly shallow in the RPG department and is mostly just about acquiring perks while being pretty good in the action-oriented area. Oblivion, you can do all of them. You can cast magic while being a sword and shield warrior. You really have a great mixture of systems between those two extremes. Reason number three, it's from Gaming Ground Zero and is a great snapshot of what was going on in the mid to late aughts in the gaming industry. If you don't know what Gaming Ground Zero is, I have a whole video on it. Basically, in about 2007, most of the big franchises and game styles that we have today kind of locked themselves in. There was a major release like Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, or in this case, Oblivion, that established a style of play, which was then copied with minimal variations for really the next 15 years. Oblivion came out in 2006, so it's one of the earliest games of the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 generation. It didn't come out on PlayStation 3 till 2007, so it kind of counts. But it really established most of the things that you're going to get in a big open world game. Most of what people think of as being unique or good about Skyrim is present in Oblivion and in a lot of places established in Oblivion. Skyrim really plays like Oblivion, just pumped up but with simplified systems. You also get a great snapshot of where graphics were headed in that particular generation of game consoles. Sharper graphics, more photorealistic, more complex environments that are made to look more real rather than low polygon count textured environments. It didn't look like a real world, but it looked like a world that maybe could be real. And though the graphics haven't aged quite as gracefully as some of the other titles from Gaming Ground Zero, they are still pretty high fidelity, and they really did set the tone for what you could expect on the Xbox 360. When this game launched on the Xbox 360, we hadn't seen high-definition graphics like this before. It blew people away, and Morrowind was pretty basic, pretty low poly by comparison. Oblivion looked, at least at the time, photorealistic. It also has that sweet full-screen glow from the mid-aughts that I just have a certain nostalgia for. It was in World of Warcraft, it was in Overlord, and of course it was in Oblivion. Everything has kind of a soft filter on it. Everything glows and looks like a memory. Reason number 4 to play this game is that there are lots of mods. Not as many mods as there are for Skyrim, but there were tons of mods back in the day. There were full conversion mods. There were mods that changed the face, that changed the animations, that added magic, removed magic, changed weapons, changed appearances, pumped up the environmental detail, did everything that you could imagine. And I've streamed my modded version of Oblivion. I may go back and relook at all my mods list and see if there's an even bigger graphical fidelity upgrade I could do with mods. But there's a lot of mods that you can play with, and so if you enjoy modded Skyrim, chances are you're going to have fun with modded Oblivion too. It really has a lot going for it. Definitely not as easy to mod as a lot of modern games, but it's probably worth your time to do so. Modding communities back in the late aughts were a big deal, and a lot of people really enjoyed making mods for Oblivion. Reason number 5, it has an amazing soundtrack, my favorite of the Elder Scrolls series, and my favorite by Jeremy Soule. I like the soundtrack of Morrowind. I like the soundtrack of Skyrim quite a bit, but there's something very special about the soundtrack of Oblivion, and especially the way that it merges with the overall ambiance of the game. Instead of being a loud and bombastic battle-driven score, it really does focus on the ambiance. If you were to look at the score as a conductor for an orchestra, what you would see is a lot of white spaces. That is, lots of rest for lots of instruments, which to me makes a very interesting piece of music because you get to feature more individual instruments and more sections with greater prominence rather than having the whole orchestra play together very often. So there's sections with solo clarinet where the clarinet really gets to play its own little theme, and with the horn. And most of the themes that Jeremy chooses to use in this score tend to be somewhat dreamlike and wandering. They have lots of leaps in them. There's almost a pandiatonic effect to lots of them where they don't really resolve to a tonic. They don't really resolve to a strong sense of release. Things just kind of wander through like impressionist music of Debussy or Satie. And of course, that rolling, peaceful, reflective, nostalgic feeling from the music gets interrupted by combat, and that's when you get the louder, more bombastic orchestral scores that you might think of being appropriate for a high fantasy battle game. Reason number 6 to play the game is the ambiance itself. It has just such a perfect ambiance to it. That is to say, when you're out exploring, you're exploring a peaceful and beautiful world and finding danger within it, finding things lurking beneath the surface that are disturbing that peace. You have gates to oblivion opening up, but the world itself has this great feeling to it, like it's a place that you'd like to visit, a place that you'd like to stay, and a place that you want to uncover the secrets for. You want to figure out where the vampires are, you want to figure out where the bandits are, you want to do the quests because the world seems like a good place that you would like to have continue. And of course that interacts with the music in some really great ways. And of course I love the great contrast with the plains of Oblivion that exist in the base version of the game, where you go in to close Oblivion gates and it's really like you're walking through hell. So on one side you have an almost paradise-like place full of ruins to explore, full of things that you want to, interesting people and places that you want to discover. And on the other side, you have literal hell that is threatening that. I think it works really well. And I also like the ambience of the main expansion to the game, which is the Shivering Isles, where you have this really strong contrast between mania, a happy mania, and a really dark depression. You can pick one path or the other. You end up exploring these two sides of Sheogorath's realm. It's just really interesting, and I don't see a lot of stuff like that done in modern games. Number 7 is that it has great quests, particularly the Thieves Guild quests, the Dark Brotherhood, and the Fighters Guild and Mage Guild, the main 4 different large quest chains that you can do. They all have interesting endings. I think the Thieves Guild is probably my favorite, where you do the Heist of the Century and steal an Elder Scroll after having collected all these items that you need in order to pull off this heist with the Grey Fox. And what I love about the player's interaction with these quests is that they really leave it up to you as the player to figure out how to do them efficiently. When you're doing a Dark Brotherhood quest, you have a target to kill. They suggest you can kill the target in certain ways, but you really don't have to. You can do it pretty much any way that you want. They even give you an option to try to poison a person that you have to kill. There's lots of different ways that you can go about actually completing the task. Compare this to a lot of modern games where they railroad you into having to do the assassination in a certain way or do a particular mission in a particular set of sequenced events in order to complete it. I think the first Assassin's Creed game, which also came out in Gaming Ground Zero, that one came out in 2007, it has that more free, open approach to gameplay that I kind of miss from a lot of games. I often feel like I'm running through a corridor, and I really didn't feel that way playing Oblivion. The characters who give you the quests are likewise a lot of fun to talk to and interact with. There's a big variety of them. There's vampires, there are murderers, there's thieves, there's mages that are doing their own kind of magic research, there's dark mages, and all of them have things to say and things to reveal and advantages that can be gotten if you're clever as a player. In fact, I would say the main quest is probably the least interesting path that you can take in Oblivion, although you'll probably end up doing it because it's so straightforward compared to most of the other things that you're doing in the game. And the Daedric quests are some of the most fun that I've had in the series. If you're playing Skyrim, I think that's where some of the highest quality quest content is in those Daedric quests, and it's also true here in Oblivion. Number 8, the magic system is the best. You can do custom spells, you can do custom enchantments on your gear. You can really break the game with the magic system if you know what you're doing. And even if you don't know what you're doing, it's really fun to just combine different spells, combine different spell effects, and see what you can unleash upon your enemies or use to benefit yourself. It's really very open-ended and a lot of fun to play around with. Do you want to make yourself completely invisible regardless of whether you're attacking? Well, you can enchant a full set of chameleon gear by learning a chameleon spell and getting your illusion magic up high enough. Do you want to make a spell that completely drains the health of an enemy and refills your own? Well, if you have a high enough restoration skill, you can do that. You can be an offensive healer. There's just so many options, and what I really love about it, especially compared to Skyrim, is that you can use that magic while you are using your weapons. So there's a much more fluid mixture of magic and combat in Oblivion. Makes the magic all the more fun to use, especially compared to Skyrim. It's just so much more fun to use the magic system in Oblivion. And I really prefer it to Morrowind as well, though you can do some crazy stuff in Morrowind. Reason number 9, it's broken. It's broken in the best way that's possible. Somebody mentioned this in a comment when I said that the game was going to be free in April. This is a game where they really set up the pieces and they let you, the player, decide how you're going to use them. And if you master the systems and if you learn enough about the game, yes, you can totally break the game. You can give yourself a 100% chameleon outfit, which will just let you walk around invisible and punch anyone you want to death, and they'll never be able to see you, regardless of what you do. That's quite a bit of fun. You can also create, as I have, a 100% damage reflect setup so that every enemy who attacks you is just doing damage to themselves. You can aggro the entire, capital city and get all the guards to attack you, and they'll just kill themselves by wailing on you. That's quite a bit of fun as well. These are things that break the game, but require knowledge of the game in order to unlock. So as a player, you feel a certain sense of satisfaction when you figure out the way to break the game. I kind of figured this out in Skyrim, where you could enchant your armor with a bunch of magic resist and the dragons couldn't kill you. But it's way more powerful in Oblivion when you figure out some of these game-breaking things that you can do. You can put on the boots of Spring-Hill Jack and enchant yourself with a bunch of plus acrobatics and just jump over the walls of the city and break the game, make it unplayable. I really like that they haven't tried to stop the player from doing a lot of those things. Modern games, again, they try to railroad you. They try to make out of bounds, clearly out of bounds. And with this game, it's like the pieces are just set up for you to play with, and you can do whatever you want with them. If you want to break the game, you can break the game, and I think it's quite a bit of fun to do so. Or it's fun to just not do that and play the game normally as well. I mentioned the depth of the leveling system, and I've done videos on Oblivion's leveling system and how to efficiently level, which will maximize your stats. That's another thing that you can do to break the game. You can end up with a character that has well over 100 of all the stats and is just completely overpowered compared to all of the creatures around you. But that requires effort, so it's like a reward for mastering the game systems and going beyond what was really intended with the leveling system of Oblivion. And I enjoy that that's there and that's an option. And reason number 10, because I say it's great, because I said so. You should play this game because I said so. I am vouching for its quality. They didn't pay me a cent to say that. It's just a really fun game. It's a great game with tons of exploration, lots of fun things to explore, and is a fun fantasy world for pretty much anyone. And I think the gameplay really holds up, and if you're willing to mod it, the graphics look pretty all right, even in 2022 as well. And I happen to know that it runs pretty well on the Steam Deck, so you can play it on that as well. Might take some effort to get good old games on the Steam Deck, but hopefully not too much. You can get that game for free this month. Before I go, let me plug some books. They're linked down below in the description. I have 3 that are really out right now. Shadow and Smoke, Part 3 of Moonsong. So you should start with Moonsong Book 1 if you want to read Shadow and Smoke. I'm really happy to finish off that first trilogy of that story. There's also Pulp Rock. It's an anthology edited by Alexander Helene. You can grab that. I have a novella that's in it, one of my 2-hour books called Farewell to Once and Future Kings, about spies who were musicians in space. I think it was a lot of fun. And lastly, Gen Y, put together by J.D. Cowan with essays by myself, Brian Niemeyer, J.D. Cowan, and stories by us as well that kind of explain our generation, or generation born roughly in the 80s. So check those out. And of course, you can hop on my mailing list at dvspress.com/list, and I will see you all next time.